All right, hey there, Brooke. How's it going today?
It's going well. It's going well. Nice brisk day this morning. I actually got in the cold plunge in the snow. My first cold plunge in the snow. So it was a fun experience.
I wonder if you could save some money, Brooke, by just like going to the hose and turning that on and kind of pouring it over your head. But no,
That wouldn't be as fun, you know.
no. Okay, gotcha. So you got to sit in the cold plunge. That sounds like punishment. I have to. I'm not going to lie. That doesn't sound fun to me. I'm more of a hot tub guy, Brooke, less
I
of a cold
just
plunge guy.
I just started. You know what? There's something about starting off the day with things that you don't want to do that are hard that make everything else seems really easy. So.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. I'm not going to test it at this moment in time, but maybe I'll change my tune down the road. Well, I'm excited today, Brooke, for our guest and kind of what we're going to be talking
Me
about.
too.
But if you don't mind, do you recall how you first met Kirsten? How did you guys connect originally?
Yeah, I think we met when I was at LiveRes, and obviously they were a big LiveRes user, and we actually did a retreat. She was one of the first LiveRes advisory boards retreats we did out in Park City, right, Kirsten?
Yeah, Park City, we had a big house out there and a great group of people.
That was a blast. That was the first one, and I still think it was the best. We rented two 5-bedroom houses like right next to each other, and just had a great time. So loved it.
Nice. That's awesome. Awesome. Well, Kirsten, welcome. We appreciate kind of your time and you hopping on with us here today. Some folks listening perhaps don't know you. Would you mind, if you don't mind, going through maybe a few minutes how you got started, your kind of work with Big Sky and kind of what you're doing today?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I always laugh that this is kind of the story of vacation rentals choosing me. And now me getting the opportunity to choose vacation rentals. And I know this is a shocker to so many people listening to this podcast, but I didn't study or have a degree in vacation rental management. I kind of, landed into this honestly because my first company, Big Sky Vacation Rentals, was born out of desperation. We had purchased a small unit in Big Sky, Montana, and had planned to use it for a vacation with our family over the years. That was 2006. 2008, everything went to, where it all went. And we found that unit was just a total boat anchor. And just the reality was it was just too much for us. So we moved out to Big Sky, Montana, picked up our 3 kids and moved into a 2-bedroom place. And so really, we found pretty quickly that's miserable living with 3 little kids in one room. And we decided that we had to do something with it, and I didn't want to give it back to the bank. So honestly, started renting it on VRBO at the time, and Airbnb didn't even exist. We rented over 200 nights that first year, and it was kind of the genesis for Big Sky Vacation Rentals in a market that literally had 125, 150 good nights. So kind of the rest is history. We ended up growing the company to about 135 luxury ski in, ski out properties, doing over $12 million in gross sales. And I ended up exiting in 2020. And now I've had the opportunity to restart a company called Curate Telluride with my good friend Kevin Jones out in Telluride. And we're really excited about what we're doing, really connecting to the community, doing a lot of giving back. And our mission is to lead with relentless generosity. So we're excited about that.
I love it. We had Kevin on the podcast not too long ago, so that's awesome. We had both you guys. So,
Nice.
it's so funny. So there's so many people. Their starts came that exact same way. I know like Angie Leone and Mike Leone out in Maui. That's exactly the same thing. And it's like so many people. It's like they did it out of necessity, not out of desire, really, in the beginning. And it turned out to be a good business for you and a good exit, hopefully. So.
Yeah, living in my camper with 3 kids just didn't seem like a real great idea. So it was get to work.
Nice.
Well, there's something about the inspiration too, I imagine, of like, we need to make this work, because I imagine you moved into another place, obviously, when you started to rent out that one. So there was probably some pressure, you were under some pressure, but you can figure out a lot of stuff when you're under pressure. When you're just kind of moseying around, there's a lot of casual, nature to it for sure.
But lots of folks along the way, as we know, and I know we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, it's like you burn the ships. You had no choice, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, what you alluded to, I think, Kirsten, is the fact that you wrote up 10 mistakes for the book. So we certainly appreciate that, and we're going to go through those 10 mistakes today. So let's dive right in with number 1. Let's get into it. Number 1: getting distracted from core business, by implementing new ideas. My need to create and my desire to be innovative, diverted resources and staff energy. So what was this process like for you? What did you create that was kind of not maybe optimal, and then how do you adjust that later on in the business?
Yeah, well, I think from a culture index standpoint, I was a strategist, and I think in the other one, I don't remember, but anyway, I always, I get a lot of energy from coming up with new ideas and being, creative with things. And I think the problem with that in my business, honestly, was that people wanted to do their best and please me as a leader. And so often they were trying to keep up with me, and it just threw our business off balance. So, for example, I thought, oh, some of these houses don't have great ski access, so we should buy a shuttle and brand the shuttle, and we should offer, rides to people from their non-ski and ski out house to the mountain, because it will make the guest experience so much better. But in reality, it just, things like that cause staffing problems, overload on people's time. I created a Peloton program in the units when Pelotons were so popular. And we had probably 10 or 12 of the properties that had Pelotons. Well, that comes with a whole host of liability and safety and needing to maintain these bikes. And so it was just a lot of things like that looking back, I should have focused more on the most important things instead of trying to be so innovative all the time.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one. I mean, that's funny because I always looked at it with, we always try to innovate and do things unique to differentiate. Mm-hmm. And I think it did help, but yeah, it is true. Like I'm sure secretly my team hated me for like launching all, delivery of USA Today's on everyone's doorstep. Like, give me a break. Like, what was I thinking? But it did differentiate us a little bit, but I could see how, I'm sure the team secretly hated me for implementing all these new ideas.
Again, yeah, I think of this.
Think about it, but what's really, really important, and is this going to really affect your guest experience to a great extent, or are you better off saving your energy?
Yeah. I think of this like medicine, Brooke. It's like you can certainly take too much of it. Sometimes a little bit of, some of these ideas, Kirsten, I think can be valuable because improving the guest experience is a worthy goal. Like, I don't think that's something we should shy away from and just do the bare minimum to keep the guest, at a 3-star level. We should try to deliver more, but you can take too much of it, right? You can take too much Tylenol and get yourself in trouble. A little bit of it can go a long way sometimes.
But how many of those owners signed up with you though, because you were differentiating too? I'll take the other side of that. Do you think, Kirsten, some of those owners were maybe coming on board because you did have some really cool, unique ideas?
Yeah, well, you just led into kind of the next mistake I made.
All right, that's a good segue.
It's a good segue because it was the second one was not hitting pause on acquisitions. And I know, given what Vintory does with, you guys are great at acquisitions, and I just happened to be in a market and had a reputation that allowed me the good fortune of really not having to work so hard at doing creative ways of, acquiring new owners. Frankly, I had people beating down the door, and it was partly because of all of what we were just talking about, being innovative, caring a lot, having a great team, having a good reputation in the community. And honestly, that was probably, if I look at one thing that caused the burnout and the inability towards the end to manage the situation, it was in 2016. I had a great idea that we were going to represent Big Sky's top 100 properties. And if I had just stuck to that instead of continually acquiring, I think, I'd probably still be there today and have a great core team that could manage what was going on. But we always, again, were off balance because onboarding, as everyone knows, is a huge challenge. It takes a lot of staff time and energy to do it right. And we really did it right because we were about brand and, having a standard and, much like what Travis is trying to do with 100 collections. So we were, doing all of that way back when. And so, I think that it's okay to say no. You don't have to have every owner, even if it's a great property. And that was the hard part. These were amazing properties.
Yeah. Well, I very often I do presentations and webinars and, conferences and things like that. And, one of the things I talk about, it's like, the top 10 ways you can grow your inventory. So I go through them all. And I always end with the last one is build a great freaking company. Like if you build a great company that your brand is so strong, like everything else just works. Now, but that's hard. Obviously, that takes a long time. And obviously you did it. You had this natural pipeline. I've only seen it probably, I'd say 6 times across the country. There's very, very few companies where their brand is so strong that the inventory just naturally, organically comes to them because they've done such a good job and they have such a good reputation. And you were one of them for sure. But the other thing you talked about with the 100 properties, and I might have mentioned this before, but I've had multiple people come to me say, Brooke, I don't want to grow more than, X, maybe it's 100 properties. And so they were like, we don't know if we need to hire Vintory. I'm like, well, let's think about it for a second. What if we take your top 10 properties and we look at your bottom 10 properties and we replace those bottom 10 with properties that look like that top 10, and we just do that year after year after year? Eventually we'll end up probably doubling your revenue and we'll end up tripling your profits with less headaches. So it sounds like had you taken that strategy, you'd probably still be operating right now in Big Sky, right?
Yeah, and we did to an extent. I mean, honestly, behind the scenes, we had a PETA grid. I think y'all know what that is. And, we were looking for those easy owners with great revenue, and the high, PETA owners with low revenue. We were finding kind and gentle ways to move on, whether it be changing geographic boundaries that we had and no longer representing in that area, because I had that happen once where all of these owners were kind of a pain in one area geographically. So I just eliminated the geographic area, and then I didn't have to tell them that, hey, you're really a pain to work with. And so we did a lot of that, but it was just still a very high demand to be in the portfolio. And when I would say no to people, what can I do, Kirsten? This is where we want to be. Will be so easy, and it's really hard to say no to $4 million properties. I live in a market that just has crazy expensive real estate and really gorgeous properties. So it's hard.
You were like doing the school zone rezoning.
Exactly.
I do like that frame shift though that you mentioned though, Kirsten, where someone was like, please take me, when you're saying no to them. Like, I think that's such a, powerful thing, because so many people, I think, in the services world and in the vacation rental world spend all this time, effort, energy trying to, go the other way. Please work with me. Please work with me. And, I always say desperation is a stinky cologne. And it sounds like you had the opposite, certainly towards the end of the business when you really figured things out. It was kind of like, no, like, this is who I'm going to take. This is who I'm going to work with. And I think that actually makes you a lot more powerful, because it is much more of a conversation about like, okay, here's what I need from you. And when you're not desperate, you can be actually a little bit more picky, even if the property does fit your criteria, but the owner is bad. We talked about that in the previous episode, Brooke, right? The owner can be bad and you want to get rid of him anyways. Maybe the property meets your criteria, but if the owner's bad, then you should ditch him too. It's so much easier to do that when you've got another owner behind them. Okay, well, I'll go work with Jane Doe because John Doe didn't work out, that sort of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, number 3, I think, is, we didn't hear about this too much, so I like this one for sure. Number 3, not implementing profit sharing and the most valuable key employees. So what was kind of the change that you made here? Did you later implement profit sharing? How'd you set that up?
I mean, we did do bonuses based on KPIs, and, I worked to get our guest survey in line with those KPIs. So I could take, responses from our survey that was sent out on guest departure and match up performance with the feedback that guests were giving, as well as we surveyed owners, and we also had KPIs by area, and people were assessed on that. But I think if I really look back and I think about how could have I put myself in a position where I didn't need to be so hands-on, and I could trust my core leaders and allow them to run with things and really allow myself to step back a little bit. I think if I had done profit sharing, I mean, stock gets messy, right? Giving ownership in a company can get kind of messy. But I think if somebody knows that their compensation is going to be partially tied to, how the company does as a whole and how the overall organization is functioning, that ties people to the organization and gives them more ownership and more, love for what they're doing. And so I wish I'd done that. There was a few people along the way. It would have really made a huge difference in their lives, I think. And that was important to me. And we did treat employees really well. But at the end of the day, it would have been a strategy I should have set up a lot earlier.
I love this, and you're right. And I don't think anybody else mentioned this, Conrad. And I don't think there's too many companies that actually do this. It took me my 4th company here at Vintory to actually implement profit sharing and also phantom equity. So if we do have profit sharing, and then obviously if we have some kind of an exit, we're contractually obligated to give a percentage of that deal to the team. But I wanted that from day one. But again, it took me probably 4 businesses to finally realize that it's a good strategy. So I'm happy to hear that hopefully you'll be doing this in the future.
Yes, absolutely. As we move forward, that is part of our compensation plan for any employees that, key employees. that we're bringing on.
Yeah. I've heard a story. I don't know, Brooke, if you follow Nathan Barry, he's the founder of ConvertKit, and they do profit sharing. They're very public about it. They're like a large email marketing software company, Kirsten. And he had a story that he told one time about why he started doing profit sharing. And it was an employee that basically went in like the weekend or something like that and found the server that was running, like this Amazon Web Services server that was just racking up a bill. And he stopped it and he like went in the company Slack and was like, hey guys, just saved us like $400 this month on this server that no one was using or something like that. And he's like, previously without profit sharing, he's like, I don't know if that would happen, you know, but someone saw it, caught it, and they were like, I just put actually more money in our pockets because we weren't using that server. And the incentives are very aligned, aren't they, Kirsten, in that scenario? That's for sure.
Yeah, we used to, when we hired our team each fall, because obviously we were seasonal to some extent. It didn't start that way, but we got big enough where we needed some assistance seasonally during ski season and summer. And we would throw a couple of oranges on the floor and we would just watch to see who would pick them up out of the new team. And, you know, it's that mentality of they're not going to step over the problem especially if there's an incentive to not step over the problem and to own it. And so we always, you know, it was funny to watch that because you always knew then who your team players were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a clever one. I like that. Awesome. Well, we'll move on then to number 4. I like the profit sharing piece, but we got going kind of in a different direction here. Number 4, getting so caught in the daily frustrations and challenges that I lost sight of the great things that we were doing and accomplishing, taking things too personally. So what was kind of the, I guess, to be honest, your emotional journey that you went through kind of with the team and with the company and your reflection on it with the team?
Yeah, I think just as a perfectionist and somebody, I just wanted every single owner and every single guest to have an amazing experience, right? I treated it like it was my vacation. So if something wasn't going well, if a hot tub broke, all of that, unfortunately, it got too personal. You know, I just let it get to stuff happens. I mean, now I can look back and go, you know, some things you just can't control. And regardless, you know, how you handle it is important, obviously. And people want to feel that you had a sense of urgency and that you cared. But the reality is I would go to extreme measures to try to rectify a situation. If an appliance went down, we would, you know, swap an appliance same day. If we had a hot tub go down, I was strategizing where could this person use a hot tub in an unoccupied property, you know, just constant involvement, I guess. And I think that kind of fried me because I just always knew the things that were happening that were not positive. And when you have 140 properties, you know, stuff's going to happen, especially in a cold climate. Cars are going to slide into garages and, you know, hot tubs are going to break and people are going to slip on the ice and you just don't have control over all of that. So I think I let my focus be too much on the things that we, you know, would miss on sometimes. And I kind of liken it to an owner we had at a property where literally we would spend 2 hours in the property prepping it for their arrival because they had a lot of, you know, particulars and we wanted to get it right. But if we missed one, she would point out the one out of, you know, the 100. We got 99 right, but we got one wrong. So we failed. And sometimes I think I let negativity get to me and I would focus on those things we were not doing so well instead of all the great things our team was doing so well and working so hard to do.
Yeah, this I think this came up a lot. Like just taking things personally too. I think came up a lot. I think Sarah Bradford talked about it. Valerie Hawkins talked about, you know, regretting taking that criticism so personally, even like an owner complaint or, you know, if somebody wanted to cancel a contract. And then Andrew with Joseph Ellen Properties talked about struggle with the whole business and that family dynamic. And in his words, not taking owner decisions, actions, you know, personally. So just, you know, and Lino, I think sent it off right. He goes, don't take yourself too seriously. You're selling vacations for heaven's sake. So yeah, there's a lot of people confided with you there for Kirsten for sure.
Yeah. And it's a bummer too for your family. Quite honestly, it just, you know, I could be having a great time with my kids or my husband doing something. And then I'd look at my phone or I'd read an email, you know, and it would just set me into a mental, you know, spin cycle. And so finding a way not to do that, not to let that take priority over personal things in your life that are important, I think is really a lesson that most of us need to learn
Yep.
if we're successful in business.
Yeah. It's almost like that stoic approach, right, Kirsten? It's like you can almost kind of build a wall and realize there's things you can control, things you can't control. And, a lot of what you can control is your reaction to it. Like not the car sliding into the garage, is like, how do you react to it? And I think also the guest on the other side, I think can feel that like, hey, we're going to handle this. We can help you fix it. But I don't think they want to see like franticness either, right? Is kind of my frame on it. Like, I think that doesn't fill them with confidence. But to your point, it's hard. Like you want to deliver a good experience. So when you put that pressure on yourself, it's like you want to feel like you can go through it for sure. Well, maybe number 5 is kind of similar then in some respect, Kirsten, about like kind of getting too deep into the pie, so to speak. Number 5, overseeing or having my hands in too many pots, not enough delegation, freedom to fail, and then in parentheses, micromanaging. So what was kind of the approach here? How do you approach it where you know what's going on and you're informed? And then maybe you took it too far and you went into micromanaging. How did you find the right balance there eventually?
Yeah, I mean, I it did get better at that over time because as I trusted people more, I did less of the micromanaging. But I just think that is also a recipe for burnout. I don't need to spend too much time because the two are kind of similar. But honestly, I just think that decide on what you really need to know. And I a scorecard idea from if we talk about EOS, what's your scorecard? What do you really need to know from people and what's driving the business? And stay out of some of the things that cause that drama and emotional upheaval. If it's not, if you've got great people who can handle issues that come up and they're doing their best job, then staying out of that is I think the way to stay engaged in what's really important and where you can really have impact in your business and be a good leader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of people talked about this. I think it was in the book. So Dennis with Cassiola, Lauren Madewell with Annie Bellums, Aaron with Meredith, Tom Goodwin with Mountain Laurel Chalets. Like everybody talked about this, but I liked specifically Lauren Madewell with Annie Bellums talking about, she said, not taking the time and delegate tasks once they become fully teachable, trainable. Delegating frees up my time for new projects or just balance and allows me the chance to show confidence in our employees and help them grow in their roles. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Really,
mm-hmm. Good. Yeah. I think there's a lot to be said. I don't know if you have team members like this or have had in the past, Kirsten, where you give them something, they take care of it, they do a good job. And there's one person on my team who, whenever she gets that verbal, like, oh yeah, that was great. Like you did that perfectly. Thank you. Like that kind of like verbal reinforcement. She loves it. Like makes her whole day just hearing like little small things like that. And you can't do that if you're micromanaging, right? If you're sitting over there looking over their shoulder, whether in person or virtual, you're actually not trusting them. When you trust them and then tell them later, yep, you did that exactly how I wanted to, or that was a great outcome for the client or whatever the case may be, then it actually makes your team feel a lot better too, to not have you there like, oh no, she's watching over me, which isn't always the best feeling for sure. But,
for sure.
Awesome. Well, let's head on over to number 6 and we will get to EOS. So stay tuned, listener. If you heard about scorecard, we'll talk about EOS in 9 to 10. So don't worry about that. We'll come back to that thread for sure. Number 6, always being an early adopter. Sure, you might be the cool kid and have the latest in our industry, but it came with a lot of pain when it came to implementation. For example, data migration issues, integration issues, challenges with functionality, and so on. So kind of like the shiny object comment, Brooke. This one came up quite a bit, but there's some good in here, right, Kirsten? You want to be on the forefront, like we were saying earlier, with technology and amenities and things like that in the properties, but you can take it too far. What was kind of the process you went through here on tech and tools?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to just the first one, honestly, which was getting distracted from core business. It's different in that these are important things. And as I grew Big Sky Vacation Rentals from one property to 135, I, again, didn't have a degree in vacation rental management. And I could see along the way as we hit certain plateaus or certain numbers of properties that we needed new tools, that the old tools weren't working. So it wasn't that those things weren't a necessity, but I think looking back, I didn't need to be the first person doing XYZ or one of the earliest people doing XYZ beta testing, this new product, etc. Because it just, again, when you're adding, anyone who's gone, especially through a PMS switchover, knows the pain in the organization that causes. And, when we switched, we did some pretty big implementations from, our first bringing LiveRes in as a PMS. I literally, before that, was working Outlook calendars and paper folders, and we went in 2013, I think, over to our first software. And from there, it just was one thing after another. We added Point Central. We added, Trello, we had, all kinds of Slack and all kinds of different things that we needed trying to solve problems of growth. But now I have the luxury of stepping back from it and working with, Kevin and saying, hey, what is best practices here? What's our tech stack that really makes sense? And let's have it from the very beginning, which financially is kind of painful, honestly. But at the same time, just getting it all in place, I'm hoping that as we bring people into the organization, they won't have to go through that pain of always switching things up. Because I think my operations manager probably wanted to kill me over implementing Breezeway. It's the greatest product, but it was, a challenge when you have 100, I think we had 120 properties at the time, and building out all those profiles and everything we needed to do to make that really functional. And it's everyone loved it once it was in place, but causes pain for sure.
Integrations are tough. It's like Tina Upson used to call it two root canals a week, and our goal is to make it one root canal a week, low bar. But I think there's a couple people in the book that agreed with you, Kirsten. There was Mike Harrington. He said, being too tech focused with a team that wasn't techie. He went on to say, most of your team is not as excited about your new tech that you want to roll out. In fact, they secretly hate it. And then Lance Stitcher with Seaside said, the technology rabbit hole. We onboarded the latest and greatest guest app, and it had a ton of shiny new features, and the sales team was amazing. We just didn't have any human capital to make it work. So you're not alone in that, Kirsten.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a tough one for sure. I think I've had to learn that lesson before too, Brooke. At the previous agency I was at, I wanted to use, this project management system. Hey, it's the best, etc. But no one else on the team bought in. So when that's the situation, you can't make any progress because you're rowing a boat all by yourself for sure, which can be challenging. There's no doubt about it. Well, let's head on over to number 7, because I think you've mentioned a lot of other authors in the book, Brooke, and maybe that ties into number 7 here from Kirsten. Not asking for help from my colleagues in the industry when I really could have used their expertise and advice, keeping things too close to the vest. So what was kind of the initial version of that, and how did you later maybe open up a little bit, if you did, Kirsten, and talk to other folks in the industry to help your business and your growth?
Yeah, it must be that Norwegian stoic that's in my family.
I got it. I can do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I just look back, and it's easy to see now. I mean, I was on advisory boards, and I had colleagues, and there were people in my life that, were just a great resource and so smart. And I now the connections along the way. And it's actually one of the reasons I came back into the industry after I said, absolutely, that will never happen. And here, 3 years later, here I am. But what I found over those 3 years, I really tried to sit back and just think, what am I going to do next? And I really miss the people. The people in this industry are amazing, and they are so willing to be generous with their ideas, their time, everything. And so, I should have, when I hit those tough points in the business, I should have just really got on the phone with somebody and broken it down and asked for that help to coach me along through it. And towards the end, I tried to do that. I hired mentors and did things like that, but I think it was a little too late mentally. I'd gone down the path too far, the negativity rabbit hole, and I just couldn't pull myself back out. So I think that, look around, go to conferences. I'm so excited. I'm going to the Women's Summit this week, and, really looking forward to connecting with some of these people again. And those are worthy time commitments and financial commitments to take time for yourself and go meet some people, find some people who are like-minded, and get some ideas.
This industry is pretty special if you think about it. I mean, the fact that you can go to some of these conferences and it's almost like a high school reunion, but you actually want to see the people, there's is something special about it. I mean, I'm in a couple of masterminds, and, I guess the relationships I've built over the years, and, to be able to, like the book, just to be able to reach out to 52 people, and without hesitation, people respond back, with with their responses. It just shows the level of the way that people really help each other out. It's not like nothing I've ever seen before in any other industry.
Yeah, and I see it with your tech stack posts on LinkedIn too. Everyone is just willing to say, like, hey, here's my peek in the cookie jar. Here's what I do. And you can do it too. Really, it's about the execution. It's nothing we're doing is secret sauce rocket science for the most part. It is just being able to execute on the ideas, because people will share their ideas and the tech that they're using, everything else. But you got to be able to put that together and make it happen.
Yep.
No doubt. No doubt. Awesome. Well, let's head on over to number 8 here in the interest of time, Kirsten, and then we can kind of bucket 9 and 10 together. Number 8, not working hard enough on my management skills, continuing to push myself to be a better leader. I feel like, Brooke, many people didn't mention this specifically, but we could all be better leaders. We could all be better managers. So what was kind of like your evolution process yourself, Kirsten, from when you started? How'd you get better as a leader as the business grew and time went on?
Yeah, I think in the beginning, I honestly was just winging it, and just a philosophy of treating people well and empowering people, allowing them to have ways to move up in the organization. All those things were in place, but it really wasn't until we implemented EOS that I started to see there was a different way to do this, where we could have departments running their own meetings. We could, as a group, be running a meeting and I didn't have to be leading it. And we could really see what we were accomplishing through our to-dos and, discussions around areas that people in the organization needed help. But I did it too late. I think we brought EOS into the organization in 2018. So the last 2 years that I had the company, and just looking back, I see the value in that now, and just the difference that makes for people in just making them better leaders as well and holding their teams accountable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right on. Well, I think you mentioned EOS a few times, so we can kind of round out here. I'll read number 9 and 10, and then maybe if you're okay, Kirsten, we'll talk about 9 and 10. They're kind of similar in some respect.
Yeah.
And then scorecards. We'll touch on scorecards, and then we can wrap up for today. So number 9, not learning about EOS soon enough, as you just alluded to. Once we all read traction and started level 10 meetings, we accomplished a ton in the first year. I wish I started that path 5 years earlier. So that was number 9. Number 10, not mapping out a 5-year, 3-year, and 1-year goals clearly, and then ending up having to bolt on solutions to growth problems as we outgrew systems. So for those that haven't read traction, that's really pretty much one of the first things you do is kind of more of that goal setting, and then you get to scorecard, you get to the reports, you get to the other pieces a little bit later on. But it's a lot to touch on, Kirsten, but if you don't mind, what was kind of your EOS implementation like? Did you do it yourself? Did you hire someone to do it? How did you put in place the level 10 meetings, the scorecard, and then the planning? I know that's a lot to go through, but just your overall experience with the process.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, like I would say that from our expertise level at EOS, if I was going to give us a 1 to 10 score, we were probably a 4 or 5 in the it was, it's a lot. And I think it's why people sometimes hesitate to start bringing it into the organization is, again, it's change and it's doing things differently. And so I do think we started to really map things out, and most of it we did do ourselves. We did have somebody helping us in the beginning, and we were, checking in with that person as a team, and they were helping us with running level 10 meetings and some of the basic pieces. But in terms of, we got an accountability chart, and we had all those pieces in place, but I don't think we had enough time to really see the outcome, what that would mean to the organization in the long run. So I am excited to try it again and start from the beginning with that way of doing things. And as a technology plug, I just happened to stumble along 90.io, and it's an organization tool online that allows you to kind of put your whole EOS system electronically and run meetings that way. And I personally love that. I'm using it right now just with 2 people, but it just is really helpful in getting everything organized.
Yeah. I'm big fan of 90.io. We tried to do it actually without it for a long time. We were running it with smart sheets just to save some money. And finally we switched over to 90.io, and it was well worth it. It's just so nice to be able to, it makes implementing and incorporating EOS into your team so much easier, just to be able to do that and see everybody's rocks, see everybody's to-dos. But Kirsten, we did the same thing. When we started Vintory, we started literally, it was just me and I had one contractor, and I'm running EOS, but it's so nice when you make it part of your culture from the beginning. It's obviously a lot easier to do it. But I would say to anyone, like, even if you just start small, just start with the level 10 meetings and rocks, like just start there. And then you can start implementing things like scorecard and the VTO and the 5-year, 3-year, 1-year goals and things like that. But just start small. Just start with it. Level 10 meetings and rocks. And there's a lot of cool stuff you can find just on YouTube to learn all about that.
Yeah.
Totally. I agree.
Yeah, that's my frame on it too, Brooke. I think if you do those 3 things, I would throw a scorecard into that like entry level mix, because then you just like go through that before you actually get into the level 10 and kind of review those numbers. I feel like, yeah, even with 2 people, like it's going to help you. You're going to be 65% ahead, like of where most people are by not having it in place, for sure. Awesome. Well, all good. Anything else here that we want to wrap with, Brooke and Kirsten, before we depart for today?
All right, Kirsten, last question. If you could go back in time and go talk to your 25-year-old self and give yourself some advice, what would it be?
Wow, that's a long time ago, Brooke. Wish I could go back there sometimes. Well, one thing is I didn't even start Big Sky Vacation Rentals until I was 42. So, it's never too late, right? And I'm starting a new company now and, 57. So that's just how it is. It's never too late to try something new. But I know what I would tell myself as a 25-year-old is to lighten up and not always be the responsible one. I was an only child and I just wish I was more fun. I like to pick funsters. Those are the people I like to hang out with because they help me lighten up and be more fun. I'm not naturally the person who's probably going to be that crazy fun person. But my mom told me something in my 20s, or she said something that kind of sent me into a tailspin. But when I really thought about it, it made sense. And she was like, if you died tomorrow, the people right around you would be sad, but the rest of the world would move on. They'd replace you in a few days in your teaching position. I was a teacher at the time. And, I was freaked out and stressed in my job. And that kind of stuck with me is, you're not that important. There's, I know it sounds terrible. So I would lighten up for sure. That's my 20.
I love it. Love it. Love it. Love it.
Awesome. Now that's good. I like that advice, Kirsten, because you're right. It's often the case that we can take things too seriously, and like if we're not here to have fun, then what are we doing, right? Like there's a lot of other things we have to do. I get, but every once in a while, it's certainly good to have fun. Well, what would be fun for the listener, I think, Brooke, is if they went to their podcast app of choice, left 5 stars, left us a review. That would help more people listen to the show and listen to smart folks like Kirsten. So we appreciate your time today. Thank you, and we will catch you on the next episode.
Thanks.